This is going to be the first in a series of instructional videos on making hand-painted silk banners for heraldry, display, or whatever really you'd like to use it for. I mean, I've seen them used, outside and to make silk scarves and all kinds of different things. This technique is the same. My name is Amanda. I go by the name Isabella E. in the Society for Creative Anachronism. That's what most people know me by now. This is a video that I've been promising to do for quite a while, but you have to bear with me because I'm not really used to talking to myself on film. So, in terms of the materials that you're going to need for this, I will post a full list of the materials that I use as well as where I get them. But to start with, you're going to need silk, and what I order is 8mm habotai silk from Dharma Trading Company. I order the pre-hemmed scarves usually. You can also get the silk by the yard, but I find the scarves to be cheap and fairly easy to work with. So that's kind of what I prefer, and I like to work in a slightly smaller size because the bigger fabric is kind of a pain in the butt. In terms of dyes, there's a couple of different choices that you can go with. I use the Dye-na-Flow brand the most. It's technically a paint, but it works like a dye, and I get really good results for bright colors with them. You can also use them like a watercolor, so if you want to do shading or use some wash techniques and stuff, you can do pretty similar things on silk with these dyes. The Setasilk brand is also really good. There's one color in particular that I always order that in. I get the black Setasilk instead of the Dye-na-Flow because the black Setasilk just it's a lot darker and it comes out less of a gray color. So that's my preference. It's a little bit more expensive than the Dye-na-Flow, I think, but the black is definitely worth it. Other than that, you're going to need a resist, and they come in two different kinds. You can get the rubber-based resist, which is called gutta, but I stopped using that a few years ago because I started having problems with the gutta breaking down over time, and so I had a couple people ask me to remake their banners because the gutta had come off on the dyed parts of the banner where it wasn't supposed to be, so I switched to the water-based resist, which is I think a little bit more difficult to work with in terms of consistency, but it's cheaper. It doesn't require any kind of special shipping, so you can get it shipped faster to you if you like. It also doesn't have any kind of fumes or anything like that. It can be thin with water. It's a little bit more of a pain to use, but I haven't had any problems with it coming off on fabric where it's not supposed to be. So I haven't had anyone say that it's broken down over time after a few years or anything like that. You also are going to need to wash your silk before you dye it because there's sometimes like residues left on the fabric that you need to remove, and so I use Dharma's professional textile detergent. It's a newer, more environmental friendly product they came out with recently. I was using Synthropol for a while, but I have been using both now, and I haven't had any issues with the more environmentally friendly one. You also are going to need stuff to draw on your silk with, so I just use a regular number 2 pencil and masking tape, and then usually a yardstick or ruler to make straight lines. For painting the dyes or paints onto the silk itself, I like these little spongy brushes. They're cheap. You can get them in packs with several different sizes, and I like these because I think that they hold more paint with less dripping and spilling, and you get, I think, a more even consistency with them than you do with paintbrushes, but I do keep paintbrushes in different sizes around in case I'm doing like a dry brush technique for shading, or if I need to get into really small spaces in between things like feathers or charges that have little tiny cracks and stuff in them. In terms of design, a lot of people, there's a couple different ways that you can transfer your design onto the silk. I have a lot of art experience, so I just stretch it out usually, and with a page of notes, like these ones, which would look incomprehensible to anybody else but me probably. I just draw most things by hand unless I'm doing a series of repeating charges or a pattern like Vare or ermine where I want things to be spaced out evenly and they need to be the same size and stuff. I'll draw it out on a piece of paper first so that I can trace on top of it. Some people use an overhead projector or a digital projector that they hook to the computer in order to put the image on the wall. I don't really have either of those things, and they can be kind of cost prohibitive, so I don't use them. I mean, like I said, I have a lot of drawing experience, so I can usually sketch just about anything. So I just stretch my silk out and I draw everything right on the silk. I only really trace things if I'm trying to get a very specific look. Sometimes if people request a particular style of charge, then I'll draw it out beforehand so it looks right. You can go with a lot of different kinds of design styles. I mean, I've done probably over 300 and some banners now. I kind of stopped keeping track, and they're all vastly different from each other. You can do something that's more historical, and I'll post some links with some examples of historical banners that survived or that there are descriptions to for different periods. But you can really pretty much do anything that you want to. I don't think people should be limited necessarily by what is exactly historical in the SCA, because for some personas there's just no good historical example of banners to do. So I think you should just kind of go with whatever you like. My preference is for simple styles. Another thing that I kind of have noticed when you look at historical banner examples is that they don't usually use the device itself on the longer banners. They would put them on square banners. The longer ones they usually would take, especially in later period, they would take someone's device and break up the colors and the charges and sort of stretch it out over the whole length of the banner with sometimes badges or kingdom affiliation or whoever the person had ties to, along with mottos and different things like that. So they can be very simple or very elaborate. I prefer to just take and make the design as sort of simple and striking as I can, because then you can see it really well from a distance, but you can also put whatever you want on it. Some people like to put their kingdom and then local group affiliation and then their personal heraldry on it. Other people like to just keep it to one affiliation, like their kingdom or household, and then their arms, or they might just use just their device. So really, it's up to you, and I'll post a link to a gallery with a lot of different kinds of designs that I've done in the past. So for putting your design on silk, like I said, I just use a regular number 2 pencil. And masking tape, because masking tape, or you could probably use a painter's tape, doesn't really leave any residue on the fabric itself, which is important. So I just take it and stretch it out on the counter. And you need to make sure that your work surface is very clean too, because whatever is on there is going to end up on the silk if you're not. I just start by taping 2 of the corners down. Mess all over the counter like usual. After you tape the corners down, you tape down one end and kind of stretch everything from one end to the other. I've had some people tell me in the past that they like to line the threads of the fabric up at a 90-degree angle so that everything is straight, but one thing I've noticed is that you can try to make everything as straight as possible, but as soon as you get it on the frame and the fabric gets wet, it's going to start stretching anyway. So I really don't worry about making sure that everything is perfectly square, because it's going to move around on you anyway. So that's a lot of extra time that you could take for something that I don't really think makes that much difference. usually start from left to right because the left side I'm going to make the hoist of the banner, or the part that's next to the pole. And I usually like to try to keep that one kind of as straight as possible because that's where I'm going to kind of base all my measurements when I start figuring out how everything is going to go on here. So it helps if that one's nice and straight because then it doesn't make your lines kind of all wobbly, but it's not a huge deal. If you want a more even workspace, you can also tape the top and the bottom and kind of make sure that the fabric is all stretched out and there's no wrinkles. But it's going to kind of depend on how comfortable you are drawing and also, you know, how complicated your design are. The next couple of banners that I'm going to be working on are not really super complex. They're just mostly geometric shapes, so it makes it a little bit easier to deal with. But the top and the bottom are kind of loose on this one, so I'm going to just tape them up really quick to make it a little easier to work with. You can also iron your silk beforehand if you want to. That will get rid of any of the wrinkles because you're going to want to pre-wash all your silk and then let it air dry. I don't like to put anything in the dryer because it's going to pre-shrink your fabric, and I kind of want it to be the biggest size that I can before I start putting stuff on there. And we're going to put it in the dryer at the very end anyway. So I haven't really noticed that the dryer really helps take wrinkles out anyway. You really kind of almost need to iron it. So there you have it. That's pretty much part one. In the next couple of sections too, I'll be covering more about the way to build a frame for doing this, the outlining process, painting, the materials and construction of your frame, as well as finishing the banner, and some sort of tips and tricks on what to do, like if your banner gets other dyes on them or if it runs, or what to do if your colors bleed into other areas and some different things like that. So that was part one, and I hope you'll find it helpful.